Okay, I think we've lost Lorna. Um, Okay, we've lost Lorna, so it's okay. So we'll start with our first panel on battle for equality. I'm myself, Councillor Sophie Nicoullaud for Ballyfermot Dreamna in Dublin. I'm the interim outreach officer for Just Transition Green at the minute. I will introduce the two speakers, and Hazel, Lord Mayor, Councillor in Dublin as well, will be the MC for the first panel. So we have Senator Flynn. I will first introduce Senator Flynn. Originally from Labour Park, Traveller Housing Site in Ballyfermot, you're a qualified community worker. You're a groundbreaker with already many firsts in your young life. You and your sister were the first travellers from Labour Park to go to third level education, going on to Trinity College and Maynooth University. You are a human rights activist campaigning for equality into diversity, solidarity and equal access to opportunity in Ireland for all, marginalized, migrants, refugees, and unfortunately so many more. Eileen, this year you have been appointed by the Taoiseach Micheál Martin as an independent senator to the Senate Labour panel. You're the first traveller and senator to serve in the Oireachtas. You are working on the introduction of hate crime in Ireland. You're the voice for the underrepresented 40,000 members of the traveller community in Ireland, and you want to give access to other underrepresented members of society to public stages to get their own voice heard. I will now introduce Anthony Flynn as well. Councillor Anthony Flynn, originally from Dorset Street, your background is in the youth community and voluntary sector. Anthony, you're a prominent homelessness activist in Ireland. 7 years ago, you founded Inner City Helping Homeless to provide outreach support to rough sleepers in Dublin city centre. You were elected as an independent councillor in the North Inner City ward in the 2019 local elections. You have been openly critical of Fine Gael Minister for Housing Owen Murphy's performance in tackling the homelessness crisis, and of Eileen Gleeson, head of the Dublin Region Homeless Executive, which is provided by Dublin City Council as the lead statutory local authority in the response to homelessness. Recently, you are speaking out on the underreported death of homeless in Dublin by the Dublin Region Homelessness Executive, the lack of sanitation facilities during COVID pandemic, and for the reinstatement by the government of the ban on eviction. I will now leave you with Hazel Shue. Thank you.
Hi, folks. Thank you, Councillor Nicoullaud. So it's great to see everyone here today. I can see the panelists. I'm going to ask the admin to mute everyone if we can, so we can don't have feedback, and only when that person speaks you unmute yourself. So I ask all panelists to mute themselves until you're speaking, because there's a little feedback going on. So today we are going to talk about struggle for equality. We have a long way to go. We constantly talk about equality in Ireland. We talk about equality across all industries and sectors, and that leads with politics first. As it stands, our space in the political sphere isn't equal. You see that across the board, where there is there's a inequality when it comes to gender. We have lower representation of women across our boards. It's lower when it comes to minority, across people with tough backgrounds. And so I think this is a really good panel to start a discussion about what the Green Party, what Just Transition Green can do in terms of building for equality, because it's not just systemic in politics, it's also quite prevalent in all parties who claim that they are equal. Currently across the board aren't, and I would say this is a great way to kick off. So I am going to ask each panelist to give a few minutes about themselves and about their work they're working on, and then I will open it up to Q&As if that's okay. Any questions, let me know. I can see the chat. So, Eileen, I'm going to start with yourselves. Thank you for coming. So, I know you've been working day and night, and I know you also have a young child to take care of. So, I will go and start with you. And if anyone has to fly off or anyone has to go a step out, let me know as well. So, Eileen, if we kick off with you.
Thanks very much, Hazel, and good to see everybody here, and especially Anthony Flynn, all of the challenges that Anthony has put up close to government and at local council as well around homelessness in Ireland, and still how homelessness is such a big struggle. So he's one of my inspirations. It's great to see him, and it's great to see everybody else as well. Firstly, I'd like to say, you know, it's sad to see what happened to the Greens. Not that it's any of my business, because I'm not a member of the Green Party, and some great young activists that separated from the Green Party. And just to say that I have got a great relationship with the likes of yourself, Hazel, with Sophia, and some good people within the Green Party. So it's not to take away that not all wants, like, you know, not all go with the programme of government and stuff. So just to say that. My name is Eileen Flynn. I'm a Traveller Woman activist, and I'll be an activist before I'm a senator, because I had to really fight, if you want, to get the seat. With the support of local county councillors around Ireland, I missed out by 2 votes, and I think that put a lot of pressure on Taoiseach and other 2 leaders to nominate me for the seat, and also to break down the barriers in Irish society that face traveller people, but not only traveller people. You know, like, we have to be very, very real that these barriers face working class people, migrant people, refugee people, people from the very margins of Irish society that we don't see in their Oireachtas. And just because there's one traveller in their Oireachtas and Lynn Yuan is in their Oireachtas also, that doesn't mean that we have equality for traveller people. That doesn't mean that we have equality of opportunity for working class people. What it means is that, you know, we're around tables that we should have been around going back 100 years ago. We finally got around to these tables, and we didn't do it by ourselves. We did it with the support of good people around us, and I think it's keeping that in mind as well, that some people would say, like, you know, you can be anything you want to be once you put your mind to it. Actually, you can't be anything you want to be if you put your mind to it. Your living conditions, your economic background, what you have in your pocket, your family's money issues, your family, like, you know, your family don't have the way of putting you through college. Well, then you could want to be a doctor or a nurse, but you've no way of being a doctor or a nurse. And it's the same way within the political system. There's no equality of opportunity, except there's little windows open that's for the others in society. And I think that's very unfair, because just because we're working class people or people from the margins of society doesn't mean that we don't have an interest in politics, because really it's politics that led us into these bad living conditions, that led us into not having equality of opportunities. So yeah, I think there's a hell of a lot of work to be done. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and a traveller man, but he's also a settled man. His father was a settled person, and his mother was a traveller, a bit like my Billy now. And he was speaking about the 9 grounds of discrimination, and how he believes that there should be more than 9 grounds in discrimination. You know, when it comes to working class people also get refused from pubs and from clubs, maybe because they're wearing like, they just come from the likes of Ballyfermot or Clondalkin and seen as troublemakers. And I would be in fully support of what he's talking about, how we should include more to the 9 grounds of discrimination, because there's more than 9 grounds. You know, while we value the 9 grounds that we have now, we have to expand in that, and we have to, because Ireland has changed, the world has changed. We have to protect people and look after people. But for me, as a traveller woman, being in the Oireachtas is about building up relationships. It's about dialogue. It's about trying to break down barriers that's there for traveller people and bringing other communities with me, you know, and supporting what's going on in the real world, and not getting involved or not getting caught up in the political system, and not becoming part of the problem. I think that's very important, that when we get into these spaces, that we don't become part of the problem, because I know for a fact, I can only speak on behalf of myself, but I see it an awful lot from the work that Anthony Flynn would do as well, and other great county councillors, would be that, you know, we're there to challenge. We're there for genuinely good reasons, and it's about being mindful around all spaces. Why are you there? You know, and it's genuinely not about getting caught up in the political, you know, like you see a lot of it is party politics, you know, and instead of doing the right thing, I'm everything but naive, you know, but I don't understand that in 2020 Ireland that we have such big inequalities, you know, such a big inequalities, and so many people don't see these inequalities because they never met people like me. They never met a homeless person. They never met a person that's living in direct provision. We're taking it all off the media, and that's having a dramatic impact on people's lives and the stereotypes of those people, because stereotyping can be very hurtful. Racism is more than hurtful. You know, it has an impact on your daily life. In my opinion, it does, because I know from my own experience. So while we have a senator in the Oireachtas and good progressive people at council level and in the Oireachtas as well, you know, it's about not becoming part of the problem.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that I fully agree with you, and I know you and I had chats about this, and it's funny when you say yourself and Lynn are there, and people kind of go, oh yeah, we have a traveller then in the Oireachtas, and people kind of think, oh, that's fine now, because it seems like a common thing that people go, oh yeah, look, you have that Asian one in as Lord Mayor, we have diversity. You have Eileen in the Oireachtas, you have minorities there, and it's just it's the phrase I keep saying. It's okay to be the first, just as long as you're not the last. Yeah.
And it's actually about Hazel not being the exception. Do you know that kind of way? And seeing the good traveller and the good person from Ballymun. Oh Jesus, you're a good person from Ballymun, and you're a good traveller. It's about not being the exception, and it's about kind of breaking down a barrier. But it's also about, like what you just said, it's not about like being the first to doing something. It's hard, but obviously I couldn't have done it by myself. I've done it with the support of good people at council level, you know. But like it's about bringing people with you, and it's also, again, I would stress the fact, because a lot of good people get into these spaces and they change, you know. So it's really about remembering why you're there, you know. And I know that, like, for me personally, you know, anytime I got up to speak, it's been about migrants, refugees, homeless people. It's been about traveller people, and it's like you're singing the wrong one record all the time. But the thing is, I'm going to have to continue with that one record, you know, because I don't like some of me feel sometimes, oh God, they're going to think, what are they going to think? Because it can be a little bit, even though it's in my head, I think it's just in my head that I feel that, sometimes I don't feel good enough to be there, you know. But it's about just still getting up and saying what's right to say, you know. Like it's, and I've even said to one of my friends last week, oh geez, I don't know if I should talk about this again. But the problem is, we have to keep talking until we're heard, you know. But no, I'm kind of like finished, but I would say that, you know, it's not, me and Lynn are not the exception. We need Black people in there. We need people from real working class areas that live the life of poverty, that knows what it's like to live in these marginalised communities and know what it's like not to have equality of opportunity. And that's what the Oireachtas was set up to do. Shannon, excuse me, that's what it was set up to do. But you haven't. You have solicitors, you have past politicians. You don't have ordinary people, if you want, like, you know, that kind of way, ordinary society. Now, I'm in a group with Frances Black, Alice Murray Higgins, Lynn Yuan, and myself. There's 4 of us in it, and you know, it's good to be able to bounce off those women and to always stand true for what we believe in. So I'm finished talking now. I'd love to hear
Oh
from.
no, keep talking. They're a great bunch of women. I worked with Frances and spoke to them before, and Alice as well. It's just they're a great bunch of women that comes from all backgrounds and have all experiences that really matter. And to your point of you and Lynn shouldn't be exception. I heard something recently. Someone tell when I raised the issue of racism was, oh, there's no racism. Sure. It's a great step when we appointed someone as that's from a traveller background into the Senate. And I was like, my reply back was, when we have 50 of those cases, when we have 100 of those cases, that's when you have no racism. When it's a 50 balance, or when you look at people and you don't go, well, we're okay doing that because that person is in. It shouldn't be that. It should be, well, that person is in because they're brilliant. It just so happens they also happen to be Black, traveller, whatever minority as well. But we need to have numbers across the board. So thank you so much. I'm going to move on to Anthony, and I'm going to come back anyway. There will be questions. So Anthony Flynn, Councillor Anthony Flynn, who I'm working with currently, brilliant councillor on Dublin City Council. I'm going to get you to give us a few minutes on your thoughts on inequality in politics, but across society, and why we need it, why we need equality.
Hazel, good to see you, Eileen. Yeah, I suppose over the last number of years, you know, we founded an organisation through empathy and compassion. You know, we saw the inequalities of homeless people and people that were basically bedding down on the streets at night time, and we decided that it was a situation that needed to be tackled. You know, and 7 years later, we're still trying to tackle that situation. And you know, I think from, you know, listening to Eileen, sometimes you feel like as if you know, you're shouting into a quorum and you're not getting any kind of response. You know, because 7 years later, we're probably still in the same situation in terms of inequality within homeless services. And you know, when we look at you know, the demographic of people that are homeless, when we first started out, we saw, you know, the average homeless person that, you know, was a man that was in a sleeping bag, that was, you know, sleeping in a doorway. And, you know, 2 or 3 years into, I suppose, after we organised and set up, it was a situation where we started seeing homeless children. And that was something that, you know, was never pushed out there to the forefront or anything. You know, it was never publicised that children were sleeping in B&Bs. And I remember when Nicoullaud set up the My Name Is campaign, and we started putting faces to these children, and people were shocked. People were utterly shocked that, you know, you can't put a child's face out there. You can't, you know, you can't advertise the fact that there's homeless children. And we travelled the length of the country, and the response that we got in regard to, you know, pure outrage in terms of the fact that those numbers were consistently increasing. And over the last number of years, those numbers haven't went down. I suppose over the last number of months, we've probably seen a decline. I know the figures came out yesterday, Lord Mayor. And you know, there was a small reduction in the amount of people that are homeless. But when we look right across society, you know, there's different gaps there that need to be filled, and we need to look at you know, how we can fill those gaps in terms of, you know, as I said, 7 years later, it's a situation where, you know, for me, nothing has really changed. And, you know, I was delighted when the Lord Mayor agreed to set up the Lord Mayor's task force, because, you know, year on year, and for me, even getting elected to the council, I thought maybe if you're inside shouting, you might get something done. You know, and at times it's so frustrating to see, you know, I suppose the not being able to get things done the way you would like to get things done. And, you know, one of the reasons why I got elected it was because of the fact that, you know, we spent so much time, you know, shouting and trying to get a response in terms of homelessness, and that response wasn't really coming forward whatsoever. And you know, and then I suppose I found out when I got onto the council that there wasn't much changing in there, because it's all red tape and meetings, and you know. But I think that over the last couple of weeks, you know, particularly meeting with the Lord Mayor's task force, you know, trying to challenge those inequalities that are in homeless services, you know, and we've made a number of agreements with the Lord Mayor in terms of, you know, trying to get the stories of people that are actually in these, that are living in these hotels and living in these B&Bs, you know, because for me, what I see us doing is what we move people around like cattle. Everybody is basically tarred with the one brush and dealt with in the one system when they come into homeless services. You know, and I suppose the lack really of mental health supports, and we saw that over the last number of, and I know later on I think we're going to talk about deaths within homeless services as well. And you know, the sheer lack of mental health supports, the sheer lack of dual diagnosis, and you know, there's so much that's going on for an individual that's being trapped within that system. And I suppose the system doesn't work. For me, I don't believe the system works for, you know, when we look at it from an equality point of view, and we look at people that are on the housing list for 7 and 8 years, and people that are in B&Bs for 2 and 3 years, you know, and they're not being moved on. And, you know, although we look at the great work that can be done, and again, I think we're going to talk about it later on through COVID-19 and stuff like that, responses that we saw, you know, we can change society, you know, and we've proven that we can change society. We've you know, right through COVID, for instance, we saw the responses that were put in place, you know, and you know, opening up the hospitals and ensuring that everybody was on the same level, and you know, ensuring that everybody had a bed when it was needed in terms of homeless services, and taking over hotels and hostels and stuff. And everything is not always going to be right, but I think that, you know, there's good people like Eileen and like the Lord Mayor, you know, that are trying to really knock on that door and change society for the better for people that are in homeless services.
Yeah, and to, sorry, Councillor Flynn, and don't call me Lord Mayor, Hazel's fine. So just so everyone knows, yeah, Anto and myself are on the task force together, and one of the, like, him and I spoke about the task force before I set it up, because we didn't want it to be yet another rant form. We wanted it to have something objective based, and this is why when he said we're trying to get service users to come tell the stories, that's why it's important. Because I think with the best will in the world, the council managers and other people do try to help, but they're in this system, as Anto was saying, that hasn't quite changed. And what we're trying to bring forward is some change. Hear from it from service users' point of view, hear from the issues, and then we can go and say, well, these are why we're saying these are the objectives that the overall department needs to fund. The other thing is, I don't believe, now I could be wrong, there was ever a will previously on previous ministers, not just any one particular one, to fund certain services as much as they can. Or fund housing in this country. I'm hoping with the current one, after we've said it to him several times and he has engaged and offers support, that he will be putting his money where his mouth is when we come to him with a list. And that I know this is public, so I'm also publicly reminding I guess the Minister of Housing that a list will be coming, and from us on the task force, and I really hope he supports it like he was eager to a month ago when we said we were starting it. So Anto, I'm gonna go into some questions now, but I have to say it's great to see you both here. So it's great to be part of this panel as well. Like Eileen's point of and Anto's point of, we just don't have enough people in politics that would be coming from different backgrounds, that we don't encourage it sometimes as well. And put it this way, if you're stuck looking for a house or homeless, there's no way you're going to get involved in politics. If you're stuck in a working class family when you're trying to put food on the table, like my mom did, you're not going to get involved in politics. I was lucky. I'm middle class now, but from the beginning, it was my mom and dad with 9 of us in a 3-bedroom. And when you're struggling to put food on the table, politics is the last thing you think about. But that's what we need to start doing, because we need to have people like yourself, Eileen, like yourself, Anto, coming to the table, being at the table, and being able to fight for those who can't fight for themselves, but also encouraging those who can't fight for themselves, that this is where you need to be at as well. This is the table we need to bring you to. So I'm gonna start asking questions. So hang on. The first one from Michael Brown is, what should the government be doing to end homelessness? Should they be arguing for a right to housing referendum and a return to the ban on evictions as soon as possible? So I'm going to give that one to Anto, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think in terms of the ban on evictions, we saw while the ban was in place that, you know, there was a serious reduction in terms of the amount of people that were in homeless services, and people were being moved out of homeless services that bit quicker. And I think that was probably the decline in the housing market over a number of months as well. And a lot of people that were working for likes of Google and that probably went home, and it was a situation where we freed up an awful lot of property. And, you know, we saw a massive reduction, but like we got to look at a referendum. You know, there's that question has been bounced around for so long. There's been so many campaigns in terms of the right to housing, and I do believe that it's a situation that, you know, everybody should have the right to housing, and, you know, that there's a right to shelter. I believe, and you know, that doesn't match up in terms of some of the facilities that we would provide in terms of accommodating people. I definitely think that we should be looking, and I think that, you know, that needs to be the next thing this year. You know, it is the right to housing, because, you know, as I said, there was a situation where we saw for periods that there was campaigns around the right to housing, but I think that needs to be organised, and I think that we should be looking at organising that on a better level.
Can I just come in there around the like, I see, it was a bit like, I don't understand that we're looking for a bill for safe housing for people, and even the housing bill, right? Because it shouldn't be up to rich people to decide if people at the very margins of society will get a home or not. You know, like it's very, for me, it's a bit like traveller ethnicity for me. Like, you know, we're looking to bring it to a referendum, and yet the majority would have been voted no by white settled people, because, you know, it's they're saying it. So while I think, like, it's absolutely a brilliant idea and I support it 150%, you know, but again, it's like, why are we bringing this to a referendum? Do you know? Why are we bringing this to a referendum? Time wasting, and people still being homeless. And when we talk about homelessness, you know, like in halting sites, people are living in shit accommodation, excuse me language, very horrible accommodation people are living in. And I think that's also part of the problem. Not services not being met for people, bins not being emptied for people, antisocial behaviour allowed to go on in many areas, not just like say in a halting site, because that's where I started off in the conversation. Even now we're anti-matronal social media, there's a lot of antisocial behaviour, and we have to ask ourselves the question is, would this be allowed to go on in any other area? Because sometimes the council thinks that travellers and working class people can police their own area, and I think that's something that we need to look at as well.
Yeah, I constantly still get texts from my aunt who's out in who's still living in the house we lived in the fur house, and she said she's called the guards over certain things, and council, and generally they're told aye, sure, it'll sort itself out. So like, someone in the community will do it, and you're there going, surely it's not up to the community. Like, it's great that we've built such good communities, but at the same time, it's up to someone else to help and support and provide. But I completely agree with you, Eileen. I think right to housing, it's a fundamental right. Right to shelter is a right, so it should not be within a referendum. it is unfortunate that's the system we're in. But to your original point of, then there's something wrong with the system, and we need to change it. So it's why we have groups like this and panels like this to try to look at where we can change. I have a question here on exactly changing, or not changing. Well, there's a question from someone here saying, do yourselves feel like you're sometimes stuck in a hamster wheel when it comes to Oireachtas, when it comes to council, on changes and how to make changes happen? So Eileen, I'll let you go. I think I know both of your answers on this one, but
I like, for me as a 30-year-old woman, to get to where I am today, I've mixed with my father's favourite film, The Good, Bad and the Ugly, and I have mixed with good, bad and ugly when it came to trying to find my own vision of how I think the world should be, you know, and within I don't know, Hazel, like, could you ask me the question again, because I'm after going off point.
Does the way our institutions work force you into a hamster wheel type position?
Oh,
Sorry, I just went back to look at it. Where you have been...
Yeah, I think Anthony already touched on that earlier on, that it's like, you know, you're if you want to say, shouting all of the time, and sometimes then you're trying to change your tactic, you're trying to change strategically around, you know, maybe I shouldn't say it like this because you won't hear it, and you try to do different ways so that you will be heard. But sometimes you do lose the head and you just feel like screaming, you know, because for me personally, for the last 10 years even, and for the traveller community as a whole, it is actually like you're going around in a hamster wheel all of the time around, like, while things has changed, I think it's very, like, I think it would be like, if I didn't say things has changed over the years, like traveller ethnicity, and then, but there's also things that changed for the negative, like the Trespassing Act, that was state discrimination that was brought in 2000, and I think, like, you know, that, like, I'd love to see change for Billy. I would love to see change for the future generation of our society as a whole. And I don't know, like, I know that I won't see it in my lifetime, but what I can do is just keep on speaking to good people and trying to find a way that I will be heard, and that the community will be heard, and people and the margins of society will be heard. And again, I think you need to remember, in these kind of roles, and I don't know how it is for you, Anthony, in these kind of roles, you are put underneath an awful lot of pressure. You're put underneath an awful lot of pressure. You could get text messages at 3 o'clock in the morning with somebody having a crisis, and you feel obliged to support that person, because who else is going to support the traveller person? Who else is going to support the homeless person at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know? So I think there's an awful lot of pressures put on people who you don't usually see around political tables at any level, you know? So yeah.
Oh, I completely agree. Anto, do you have anything to add
to
that question?
Yeah, you know, I agree with Eileen 100%. I think at times you do feel as if you're shouting and you're not getting a response, you know, and you know, somebody actually said to me, I was with the president the other day, and someone said to me, what did you bother going up to him for? Sure, he's, you know, what's he going to do? You know, why did you bother? And if we all had that attitude, you know, and we all went along that line of not bothering, and it does upset and annoy me at times that, you know, when you're trying and you're struggling and you're trying to, you know, put your best foot forward in terms of getting things done, and you know, I'm sick of looking at reports. I'm sick of looking at report after report after report. I want to get things done. Like, for instance, sitting on the LTACC, the local, you know, not many people wanted to go onto that committee. You know, Sophie come on board there, and I couldn't believe some of the stuff that was going on, you know, within Halton sites and stuff like that, until it was actually around the table. you know, with representatives of the travelling community, and saw the inequalities that you know, most of those people faced. And I suppose, you know, then you're trying to get, you know, we're trying to push motions and we're trying to get this done and people don't agree. And, you know, there was an argument over property tax the other day, and we have money to fund services and this and that. You know, and everybody has an opinion. But I think, yeah, you know, definitely you're right. It is a situation at times when you feel as if there's nobody listening. But if you know, if we all went along that line, you know, we'd get nothing done, you know, so.
Yeah, and I think that leads me to the next question by Councillor Lourdes Scott. Sorry, I didn't call out the person asking the last name, but there was a bit of confusion in the chat there. But Councillor Lourdes Scott is a councillor in Greystone, and she's an amazing councillor. And she finds, I think from speaking to her, she finds it really hard that one of the main issues dealing with homelessness is that sometimes she hits a brick wall. So she's wondering, I guess this is more to you, Anto. Let me go back to it. Sorry, it's been a bit messy here on the chat here. Apologies to everyone. Trying to assist people at risk of homelessness or who are homeless is one of the most difficult parts of my job. Is there anything practical that can be instigated at a local level that could improve this? I guess coming from as a director of a homeless charity, what do you think, Anto, in terms of a practical level?
I think on a practical level that, you know, we created an industry in terms of homelessness. You know, when we look around us and we see all the, and like, you know, there's organisations that are doing absolutely fabulous work out there, but it's costing us a hell of a lot of money, and particularly from the DRHE's perspective, when we look at the amount of money that's being spent every year, and are we actually garnering results? You know, practicalities on the ground, it's very, very difficult, you know, if you're dealing with, and the demographic has changed as well, you know, when we talk about, you know, we're dealing with people that might have substance misuse issues and stuff like that, you know, and practicalities around trying to get them maybe in, like one issue I have is that when we send somebody off for detox and we bring them back into that same system and put them back into a hostel with individuals that are using substance, you know, what did we spend 6 months sending that individual off for? And, you know, but practicalities, you know, there's a lot of good work being done by a lot of different organisations. But what we need to do is we need joined up thinking. You know, there's too much, I suppose, of organisational, you know, and it was, we spoke the other day when we saw a report on homelessness and day services and stuff like that. And, you know, the DRHE had been critical of soup kitchens and stuff like that. And, you know, I don't believe we need 27 soup kitchens around the city. But again, you know, that's practical. People are going out there and they're empathy and compassion and, you know, trying to support individuals. Like, you know, people are not rocking up to those soup kitchens, you know, because they're there for the crack. People are doing that because it's a situation where, you know, we're seeing increased levels of food poverty and you know, people are coming from their homes to visit some of those soup kitchens. But practicalities, you know, it's very, very difficult, I suppose, from a homeless service point of view, you know, and trying to get anything done and push somebody out the other end of that system, it's very, very hard.
Yeah. Eileen, do you, I think working with the traveller community, I just some of the conditions, hearing from yourself, hearing Sophie, hearing from Cindy Joyce is absolutely appalling. Is there, what can we do on a local level or national level in your eyes of doing better? What are the methods, straight away things that we can do as well?
I just think it's like when I worked in a local traveller organisation, I've been called troublemaker. I've been called many a thing as a young traveller woman around the redevelopment of Lavery Park in Ballyfermot. It's the oldest halting site, oldest official halting site in Ireland. I've sat around the local traveller consultative committees, and it's the only committee that county councillors don't get paid to be on. Any other committee, county councillors are paid to be on, and you get great county councillors that's on those, and they're the county in many cases, like Anthony, like Sophia, and these are county councillors that want to see change. You know, Melissa out in Dunleary, like great people who want to see change for traveller people and want to, like, the money doesn't even get drawn down. So like the white settled people think that travellers tax wasting money and traveller accommodation, blah blah blah, but it doesn't even get drawn down. And I remember actually I was very impressed. I think Anthony was actually one of your first meetings you attended. I was there as well, and I remember Anthony holding the council to account. And I think it's around right now, and traveller organisations are doing it all around the country. We're holding the council to account, but again, the council has the power. You know, at the moment, actually, and this will be public after I say it, because like everybody already knows anyway. The Dublin City Council won't work along with the local traveller organisation with the traveller community in Lavery Park. They work on an individual level along with traveller people, bypassing the organisation. And again, it's around collective work. What Anthony said just there, it's around the collective work, and it's not really around the charity model, because that doesn't empower people. You know, and people are so desperate, living in such bad conditions, that obviously they're going to negotiate with the council and whatever housing agency. But that's just some of the struggles in Lavery Park site where I'm brought and word, is that the council won't negotiate along with them, and it just goes to show you they have the power, you know. And that's not taking anything away from, there's like, you know, even the county councillors that supported me, that shows me that not all county councillors around the table are bad county councillors, and that they're racist and all that kind of stuff, because they're not. There's great people in these and sitting around the local traveller consultative committees, but again, it's the only committee that you don't get paid for doing. So you sit around, and it requires an awful lot of work. And I know it's not about the money, but still you get paid for being on other council committees, but just not the one that's around traveller accommodation.
Hazel, I think Eileen said something very interesting there. They have the power. The problem is that there's not enough will. There's not enough will in society to change some or shift some of those stigmas that have been there for years, you know. And it's political will, you know. It really is, because it's all about politics. No matter what, it all leads back to politics. But trying to have that will to change, or that will to move in the right direction, is very, very important. And I don't think, I don't think we have it at the moment, in particular around the inequalities with the traveller community and with the homeless community.
No, we definitely don't, to be honest. And it's something that myself and Sophie,
there's one thing we didn't touch on, and I'd like to touch on it really fast, because there's it's the normalised of being racist around those others in society. Like, you know, don't build home accommodation for people, for asylum seekers. Don't build accommodation for the travellers. Don't, you know what I mean? And like, there's a lot of county councillors, and we have to be very realistic around this. And it's not about a fight all of the time. It's about coming around the tables. It's about negotiation. It's about having conversations, getting to know each other, learning from each other, because so many councillors, and we've seen it, and we're even seeing it to date, using the anti-traveller card to get votes in local areas. You know, like so many. Like I was speaking to a TD last week, and she was telling me how a councillor or a county councillor is always on the radio giving out about travellers, but that's getting him votes. You know, that's getting him votes.
Eileen, remember Peter Casey? Remember Peter Casey, and also another minister who actively leafleted in South Dublin about that. Like I remember when Carrick Mines happened, when the fire in Carrick Mines happened, because the other half is child protection social worker, and his client was there, and he came back and he was there going, firstly, I can't believe this shit is happening. Secondly, I can't believe that there is a minister that's leafleting to not build a new site to house these families that just went through this tragedy. Yeah. And it's to that point that it's normalized. People think this behavior is okay when it's not. It's absolutely not.
Like, it's even around social housing as general, Hazel. You know, some people don't want social housing in their area because it'll bring down their property.
Yeah.
You know, like I've heard nonsense like that, and I've heard it for years, you know. And you're like, for me, you get to know people all of the time, and they think that you're going to agree with them. Oh no, I wouldn't like around here now to be social housing because it'll bring down the property. And I'm looking at saying, who do you think you are? Like, you know, do you think you matter more than other people? Sorry, I get a bit, no, but it does, like, it's very, very frustrating when you see all these big inequalities, and like, you know, and again, people feeding into the, like, you know, poor, like, it's about having empathy for people. It's not about pitying people, because a lot of the time people don't want your pity. The majority of the time people don't want your pity, and a lot of homeless people are not drug addicts, you know. A lot of homeless people are not alcoholics, and like are using any kind of substance misuse, you know. And homeless people are judged, you know. Homeless people are judged for being homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. But
sorry,
but
my
to
passion is coming out. Shut up.
Don't, it's all good. To your point about drug addicts or alcoholics, but like myself and Andrew talked about this. If people are, that's also okay. It's something we have to accept, that we need to support them in it. That's why the well shelters, the Pole Trust model, that's why those work, because we need to provide for different work.
And you know, if I could say one thing about that, Hazel, is don't hate the person, hate the addiction, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I have it like, you know, I've seen it, I've grown up with it, I've seen it from society as a whole and stuff. And I just think, you know, in one sense, people don't understand, like, nobody wants to be a heroin addict. Nobody wants to be wants to take tablets. Nobody wants to, you know, nobody wants to be owning out money for drugs and stuff. And I just think that society don't have enough of empathy. We walk down the street, we see a person who's homeless, and, you know, automatically we think that they're or even if they are an alcoholic, ask yourself why.
Yeah.
You know?
So I absolutely, like, my granddad was alcoholic, and I would be the first to say none of us ever blamed him, and he was a man that had issues, and this comes back to Anto's mental health problem that we don't deal with as well across the board, especially in homeless sector. And this is something we need to, it's not even we need to look at, we need to actually start taking action at now, rather than say in 6 months or in 10 months. Or to that point, I also have the next question, and I think it would be one of the last questions. It's from our national coordinator, a woman who has done endless amount of work for us of late, Cllr. If you can make one achievable, forget about the will, change to the system over the next 6 months, what would it be and why? So, Anto?
Jesus, there's one for you now. I'm going to follow up with you, Hazel, on this. I suppose what we need to do is we need to go back to, or remember years ago, when you know, there was the death of Jonathan Corrie and Alan Kelly. He got rid of what we were calling wet and dry hostels at the time. And, you know, we've got the demographic of people that are in homeless services now has changed dramatically over the last 2 to 3 years. And there's many, many people that don't, like, you know, when we hear about homelessness, we talk about addiction straight away. There's lots of people in home services that haven't got an addiction, that don't.
Yeah.
You know, I people that come into my office for case management on a weekly basis, and they tell me they're sleeping in a room with 4 people and somebody might have, and, you know, we can't judge the person that might have an addiction either. But if there's one thing that we could achieve over the next couple of months, or over the next 6 months, would be to go back to those wet and dry hospitals that were giving people the opportunity that if they do come out on the other side of rehab, you know, that we're not putting them back into that same old cycle or that same hamster wheel that they were in previous, you know. And it was crazy that we even done this. You know, it was a decision, again, as I said, from Alan Kelly a number of years ago. But, you know, I would love to see a target and a goal for the council to go back to a situation where somebody that doesn't have a substance abuse issue, you know, that they don't have to go into a hostel or go into a facility with somebody that might have a substance abuse issue, and particularly if they come out to their side. So, Hazel, that's one for your list for the Lord Mayor's Task Force. You can sign off on that next week.
Because I'm not on them now, in fairness, because I think you're absolutely right. So, Eileen, I think any for you for the next 6 months, it's something that you would, I guess, Lottie's question, let me look at it again. Sorry, doing this on the phone has been not good. If you could make one achievable, forget about the will, change to the system over the next 6 months, what would it be and why?
Again, I'm going to be like a little bit of a broken down record here. I would love to see, as well as the bill around homes, everyone has the right to homes. the Education and Traveller Cultural Bill. For me, myself, I would love nothing more, because of how scary Ireland is getting over the last number of weeks, and you all know what I'm talking about. It's about, you know, hate crime legislation for people, because Ireland is not getting any way. If I could just achieve that in 6 months. Now look, it's not possible to achieve it in 6 months in a sense, because there's so much research, so much what does hate, what does freedom, what's freedom of speech, what's hate speech, and you have to go into the depths of that. And look, it'll probably be this time next year again, you'd even have something drawn up in it. But if I could, that would be it. So I know that when things get out of hand in Ireland, that people who are and the marriages, the majority of like refugees, migrants, travellers, they're all protected underneath a hate crime legislation that works. Because again, it's always the, you know, it's okay for politicians to be racist towards travellers. It's okay for people to come out in their casual racism every single day, and I don't think that's acceptable. So that's what I'd love to change in 6 months.
Yep, and I guess for me, it's to Anto's point, it's the very reason the Homeless Task Force was set up, was that we get some wins. We start actually pushing back the tide and getting some wins and making sure we do have that right to housing, right to shelter that people desperately need, because we are in a pandemic, but the other emergency is still there. The other emergencies, the other issues we have is still there, and that's what we need to do. On the hate crime thing, I constantly worry, and I think you and Eileen, agreed on this worry, is that I worry looking at Alex or looking at kids that look like me in the future, or come from backgrounds, different backgrounds like yourself in the future, that they will end up, they will end up being targeted. And I'm not saying they definitely will, but the more that our society condones what's happening at the moment, the more that we allow disinformation being pushed and being polarized, that divisions are there embedded, the more it will happen. So it is like, people say to me, and it's even within the party sometimes, of, is it really happening? Surely the world is getting better, and like, we have you there in office, we have Eileen, we have other people, they're gonna defend things. It's getting more neutral. Racism isn't really there, and they're going, are you kidding me? Like, it's
But there's
blatantly
one thing about the hate crime legislation. It don't just protect, and that's my whole thing. It's about collective action, and Natalie rightly pointed it out there. You know, like, it's not it's not about just one community. It's not equality for me, and then not, like, you know, we can't work that way. We can't be like, which community suffers worse than society. A lot of community, like, you know, I always say this to people: if we house people in asylum seekers, doesn't mean that Irish people are not going to get a house. You know what I mean? Like, it means that we all, it's a bit like, you know, you're starting off your question around politics and stuff. Like, there's space around the table for us all, you know?
Exactly.
And I think if you are hate crime legislation, it's for LGBTQI plus people. You can add with people for who have a disability or disabled people, and it's a real collective bill that it's a real collective legislation that will work for many people. You know, 21st century Ireland, no Muslim woman deserves to be spat in the face going over Halfpenny Bridge because she's wearing a hijab, you know?
Yep.
So,
and to your point about collective, I think adding protections to people does not necessarily take away rights from all, and that is the argument that I hate when people throw at this. And this is why, hate crime, I think, Lohin, the answer here is making sure that we end homelessness. Having hate crime, having a right to shelter is the collective response here from our panel in terms of what we will do next 6 months. And I do hope any political leader that will be watching this will bear that in mind, that we will be, I guess, individually or collectively knocking on doors to try and make these things happen. So, Eileen, Anto, thank you so much. I am going to, I don't think there's any questions more. I may have left one or two people out, so sorry about that. The chat has gone a bit mad with someone accidentally posting on at the moment repeatedly. So a massive thank you to you both. A massive thank you to Sophie. And Eileen, myself, Sophie, Patrick, Costello will be calling down to Labrador Park shortly, actually, on another to tie in.
Just say that, 1 second, I just want to have a look at your chat for a moment. What should I do if I'm a racist?
Go on, Eileen.
You're just a fucking, my message to you is you're a fucking gobshite.
Fair play to you, Eileen.
But Hazel, I actually think it's time we get off this. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And,
Thanks for having us, guys.
everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, take care, Anthony and Eileen.
Thank you so
See you
much.
later.
Right. Thank you, Hazel, as well for hosting that panel, and thank you, Sophie, for organising it. That was really fantastic.